Cache-maniacs.
GeoGearHeads.
Thanks for joining us for the 57th installment of the GeoGearHeads. I'm the bad cop with Daryl W. Ford to talk about technology to support your geocaching events.
This is another topic we could spend several shows covering and not even get anywhere close to covering everything. But today we're going to be covering some of the big things that we've come across. We know those of you in the audience have some great experiences, good and bad, which might help others out. So let us know what those are. Send them in. We'll share them with the rest of the crew. We really like getting those in your own voice, and the best way really is to record an audio file on the computer or even a smartphone, then email that to us at geogearheads@cachemaniacs.com. But really easier is the old school route, and that's to call our voicemail line at 206-350-3647, and then you can just record like you would on answering machine or whatnot. You can also type something to us through social media or again by email. No matter what, drop us that feedback though to share with your fellow listeners and or viewers.
Now, Daryl, we have some great shows coming up, and we want your feedback on those as well. Our next show is Caching with UV Light, followed by the next randomized show. Then for the 60th show, we're talking about the Ontario Trails Project. So that's our schedule for the next 3 weeks. And with that randomized shows, in there you can send us just about anything you want to discuss.
Yeah, we do have some feedback on one of the earlier shows for today, too. But just a quick reminder that if you're really into the show, you can watch us record it live. We do these shows through the Google Plus Hangout on Air feature, which also streams out live through YouTube, so you don't even have to have Google Plus. And you can watch the stream on the Google Plus for those sessions, or we tweet the link out through our GeoGearHeads Twitter account. We start about 9:10 p.m. Eastern, 6:10 p.m. Pacific, depending on how things go. And if we're having an issue today, we started a little bit late, about 9:15-ish. We do still have some problems with the Google Plus Hangouts on Air sometimes, and if there is an issue where we're going to be a little late, or I shouldn't say a little late, more than a little late, and if it doesn't look like we're going to be able to, we'll let you guys know too. We'll just pop a note out on Google Plus and Twitter, so you don't have to sit there waiting too long. Just make sure to follow us at the GeoGearHeads on either Google Plus or on Twitter, and both of those links are available through the Cache Maniacs website. And for Google Plusers, we do set up events as reminders, so you'll see the scheduled shows and when they're expected to start recording. Now, enough about that. Bad Cop, let's get to the feedback from, I think it was show 55.
That sounds about right. Now, this is from Wet Coaster, who's just north of me on this side of the continent. I don't see where caches are restricted in not being able to use NFC. The geocaching.com help site describes beacon caches as, quote, in geocaching, a beacon is a wireless device that transmits a brief message, needful for finding a cache. The description that follows mentions the chirp. The chirp is a specific beacon. Now, I read this as a description of one type of beacon cache, to be designated as an unknown type of cache. Now, a local, well, to me, example of this is GC3YRKF, named Not for Chirpers. The cache is a puzzle that, when solved, directs you to the spot where the NFC chip is. Then you get the info from the chip to where the cache is actually located. I know the owner will help people who don't have the capability to read information off of an NFC chip. All you have to do is ask. This is a new capability, so that's why there aren't many around. I'd like to see more NFC-related caches, as the chirp type cache is very restrictive, with only a few Garmin GPSR units having that chip, the ANT Plus chip, to read it.
Well, we did receive good news from Eric, Groundspeak social media guy, and he was actually on our Beta 20 show. He wrote us and said, NFC has just completed its trial and is now available for caches without any special permission. All they need to do is put a wireless beacon attribute on the cache page because NFC is a type of wireless beacon. We also heard back from Nicole of Groundspeak's community support, and she sent us the following. Thank you for writing the geocaching.com regarding caches using near-field communications technology via cell phone. This is no longer being tested, and we are allowing geocaches with this technology as long as there are no restrictions on using specific cell phones and the cache follows the guidelines. Please include the beacon attribute on the cache page. So it looks like now we are free to NFC away.
Yay. So it's time to get out there and place some of those NFC caches. Now, one more thing before we get into our event support discussion tonight. We mentioned that there was going to be a host traveler race this year, and we have a little share about that. First off, we've worked with the creator of tb-run.com, and he's created a special race type for us. The race starts on March 1st, so you have just about a month to get a traveler set up and ready to release. It can be a coin, dog tag, or just about any geocaching.com trackable you want to release. On the traveler page, you need to include a tip or trick for other geocachers. You'll need to register with tb-run.com and add that traveler to the GeoGearHeads 2013 race. And of course, we'll have a link to that in our show notes. The race is scored, get this, by the number of cachers who have moved the traveler, and this race ends September 1st. So that's 6 months, 6 full months for your traveler to meet as many cachers as it can. You know, Daryl, a cheat might be taking it to something like a Geo Woodstock and seeing how many you can get there.
Yeah, I think that this is going to be one of those where we have a lot of people taking them to events to get them moving.
I certainly would. Now, this is just for fun, but we might come up with some prizes for the winners. If you'd like to send us something, perhaps a geocoin or a path tag, you know, something trackable for the trackable race, we'd love to add those to the prize pool, and we'll post more on that later. Right now, let's get into our discussion of tech in the support of events. I got that all wrong. Tech in the service of event support. So let's get rolling and sharing event caches with the attendees.
Yeah, that's a great place to start. And what we're talking about here is whether you either have temporary caches or permanent caches set up for the event that you'll need to get to the attendees. Now, when I got started back in, I think it was 05, that used to just be a sheet of paper with the information, but these days that really doesn't cut it, as most cachers attending their events expect to have the information available for their GPSRs and for their smartphones. No one wants to go and punch this stuff in manually like we did, you know, a decade ago now.
Exactly.
You know, modern cachers really expect a GPX file of the caches that they can load into their device. Now, smartphones have made the job of transferring data pretty easy. An email, we talked about the shared Dropbox folders or website that you can do for that. To transfer those is really simple, nice and easy. Just post it, and we'll get into that probably a little bit more later on. But it's the GPSRs that gets a little bit different, and sometimes you can get an SD card and load those in with laptops. You can usually copy a GPX file directly to the card. You can do it to the units directly, but SD cards have their issues.
Well, Daryl, not every GPSR has the ability to use an SD card. Many units use standard-sized USB cables, such as mini USB, to transfer the data. So if the unit can connect to a computer as a storage device, you can just simply drag and drop that file right onto the GPSR and be done. But even that's not guaranteed. There are more types of GPSR connection cables than you can shake a stick at. A good collection of those cables would be very handy. So when that trusty yellow E-Trex dies, save the cable. Now, my eTrex cable was serial, not USB, and most modern laptops don't have a serial port anymore. So a simple USB to serial adapter is going to do the trick. They're a little pricey, but it's always good to have one of those on hand.
Yeah, it does. Now, and the problem though is a lot of the stuff doesn't actually work with serial. So you want to, if at all possible, test this stuff out. And you're going to need a big old bag or maybe even a trailer to haul around cables for every one. But it is a great thing to have those cables. And if you're going to be loading the GPSRs, it really is safest. It's best to just use software. GPX files are great for most newer GPSRs, but the older ones require that they be transferred in. And we talked with the author of GPS Babble on episode 30, and that is a good solution. I've yet to actually try it out, but that's a solution that just takes the data in and spits it out to a GPS, and that was largely what it was designed for if you listen to that episode.
Mm-hmm.
What most people actually do, though, is still use GSAC. Most of the time, they're bringing all of their caches together in GSAC anyway, so it's just really easy to take GSAC, prep all your data, spit that GSAC file out to all of the people who will be helping, and it is really important, especially if you have more than about 10 people, that you have multiple people, multiple computers, multiple operators all doing all of this. Bring as many cables as you can for as many different units as possible. Spares are good too, because you never know when you might break one. And there are some of these where you're best to do stuff, multiple cables, like mini USB is really common. You'll probably want 3 to 4 times as many of those, because that's what most current GPSRs use, as you do for something like a DeLorme cable or an eTrex cable or one of the old Triton cables, or whatever specialty cable that you might have had. Those are the standards. That's what all the Nuvies use. That's what all the new Garmins use. That's what all the new Explorist units from Magellan use. So, lots and lots of mini USB cables help. Set up your GSAC station for one particular type of unit with that cable. Have that person load all of those. Then if you're running over, like let's say I have 50 people with Garmin 62s or something like that, and I only have 2 or 3 people with the Magellans. Well, you have the Magellan Explorers guy finish those and then switch over and do the Garmin units with their stuff. But it really does help if one person handles one type of unit. And again, one of the problems that we've seen is something will get hosed. So having the redundancy of multiple people doing multiple units really does help, because we've had multiple times where GSAC talks to some GPS that gets the whole application screwed up, and we have to shut that computer down. In some cases, we have to actually remove GSAC and reload it. It gets that bad. So it's nice to have multiple computers, multiple cables, just that way you can take care of any of those contingencies that pop up and can cause problems. Now, one of the things that they did this year at the really big New Year's Day event is when you came in, you checked in your GPS, they loaded it, and then they gave it back to you when they were ready. I didn't really like the way that worked, but it does solve a lot of problems, like what happens when a computer dies, like, the GSAC gets locked up, who knows, it could be Windows gets totally farked and you have to start over with Windows. But whatever the case, that's going to freeze that line. So by having all of the units come in and all of them spit back out, that's a really good way to solve that problem. But you have to give up your GPS to do it.
It is, and it allows them to, group the like GPSs and do those all in one batch. So it's a little quicker than changing cables and protocols for each unit as it comes up.
Absolutely.
Now, for smartphones, it's always helpful to create a zip file or zip archive of that GPX file. So just like the one you get from the PQ from geocaching.com, you can post that somewhere and provide a URL. We talked a little about using Dropbox. And so that's always a good way. Now, publicly available Wi-Fi is helpful, but you can also tether a mobile hotspot or phones to help out that publicly available Wi-Fi.
Yeah, and we do want to get into that a little bit more, but one of the things that we should mention for those smartphone users, if you're not going to post it on a server publicly somewhere, typically what we end up doing is an email. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that we found to speed that up is from your home computer or a better connection than a wireless connection, take and create a bunch of drafts that you can then go in, punch in the individual email for that person and send each draft to them. So then it's a one-to-one. You don't have, some people like to do the blind carbon copy to everyone. Mm-hmm. I'm not a big fan of that method, especially because then you have to wait for everyone to get the message, or everyone to sign in and give them their email, and then send it out. This way, you can do it more one-on-one. They come up, and I hate to say it, I actually took a Bluetooth keyboard a couple of times with my iPhone. Set the iPhone down. Here's the keyboard. Okay, type in your email address. Does that look right? Good. Send. Okay, next person. And that actually does work really, really well. If you have the Bluetooth keyboard that you can pair with it, and remember that a lot of these Bluetooth keyboards will pair to your computer and to your phone or tablet. Mm-hmm. So it is a great way to do that.
It is. Now, you can also set up an email account with an autoresponder, like an out-of-office message that sends an attachment with it. And that's really a nice way. Here, just email this address, you'll get the file back.
Yep, and that way you're pretty much assured it's going to work. Mm-hmm. But especially with the smartphones, you do want to be more hands-on than you typically would be with the GPSRs, because it is so new and most people don't really know what's happening yet. And one of the big problems is if you have a cache that's not listed on gc.com yet, you can't use the official app. Mm-hmm. And you can't send the file to the official app either. So that's one thing that really gets a lot of people thrown off during these events. And for those people, I generally, for iPhone users, recommend they grab Looking for Cache or GeoBucket, because those two are free.
Right.
And I tell them usually that I prefer Geosphere, and it's much easier. And over half the time, they just go out and buy Geosphere. And I've gotten a few people emailing me afterward going, "This is great. I love the app. It's so much better."
It certainly is.
And there's a version of Geosphere coming. So I'm really anxious to see what that's going to be like. On the Android side, there's the free trial of both CacheSense and Neon Geo.
Exactly.
At the events, that's the best way to do it. Tell them, go grab the free trial of both of them. Try both of them out. Not necessarily at the same time, but try both of them out. See which one you prefer, and then go and buy it if you like it.
Right.
If not, you can still use it for the day and don't have to pay anything and learn a little bit about a different app.
Exactly. Well, we just talked to the developer of Neon Geo, and so it's a 30-day free trial on both applications. Go get it. See if you like it. You can't lose money on a free app.
Yeah. Yeah, actually, he wasn't the developer. He was the
You're right.
Forum moderator.
Forum moderator.
Yeah. But in any case, point them to that show if they do grow and grab Neon Geo and want to learn more about it, because that taught me so much more about Neon Geo than I ever knew. So great thing to point them to, preferably on YouTube because of the screenshots. Right,
exactly.
But getting back to the Wi-Fi, you can do that. The mobile hotspots, though, public Wi-Fi is great. Everyone can usually jump on it. But the mobile hotspots typically have limits, whether it's the dedicated mobile hotspots like a MiFi or whether it's the tethering to the phone. Sometimes I've seen it where it only allows one. Most of the ones are like 5. They only handle 5. So when you're doing that, that's really for your volunteers. And it is really helpful if whoever is loading those GPSRs has that connection, because then you can just email the files to them or transfer it around. They can go grab stuff if they need to. Whatever the case, it's there. It's just nice to have. But I still prefer to transfer those files around on something like a USB thumb drive because it's safe, it's quick, you don't have to worry about it.
Exactly. It depends on the size of the event. If you're, a small event of 20 people, Wi-Fi is not going to be too much of an issue. But when you get into an event of hundreds or thousands, don't trust that Wi-Fi or your cellular connection is going to work for you.
Right.
Those systems can get overwhelmed very easily.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and you can be in a venue that might not have good reception if you're, for Wi-Fi even. But if you're bringing a hotspot with you, you have to have a good cellular connection.
Mm-hmm.
And we were just talking about that New Year's Day event that I went to. My MiFi had no reception in the hall because it's in the basement of a church.
Right.
You're not going to get a signal down there. And that's one of the big problems, no matter what, when you're working with the cell phones. You can, on Android phones, do some file transfers directly, but that takes a lot longer, and I really don't like doing that. I prefer to just send it to them. So that's where, like, the Wi-Fi is really helpful to have something there. And there are venues that we've been at where they have a secured connection that, as the event host, you can get access to.
Right.
So that's a great way to do it. If you have the laptop set up for loading the GPSRs and it's not too big, or if you have someone who can do some of the specialty units and email the files, that's a great way to go as well.
Exactly. So consider multiple avenues to get to the internet if that's the way you're going to do it.
So, yeah, internet is also nice too for the guests if you can. Meet and greets, we love doing those at places that have the Wi-Fi, like a coffee shop, because that way people can go and check on the caches, update their logs, post their logs, that kind of stuff. So it is nice to have, but generally don't count on providing it. If it's provided by the venue, good, but it's a lot of work to try to provide good stable Wi-Fi for any quantity of people.
Exactly. Well, let's move on to presentations.
Very good, especially for like GC 101s, which I think some of you guys are probably going to be talking about doing pretty soon.
So this is if you're giving the presentation. There's three major areas we want to talk, and that's your audio, video, and the booth itself. Let's start with audio. I think we know a little bit about audio. The key is just a little. Just make sure everyone can hear you. I've been to some presentations, not geocaching, okay? There have been other presentations. And there's a screen up at the front, and they didn't bring any sort of PA system. And you're straining to hear it. After a couple of minutes, I said, I'm done. I can't hear this. I can see what's going on, and that doesn't cut it for me.
Actually, we were both at an event with panel discussions that the audio department fell down on them, and they didn't have the expected hardware for audio. So it was a lot of shouting and a lot of people not hearing very well.
Yeah, so that doesn't work out. Now, you need to bring or have provided mics, amps, mixers, speakers. That's the absolute basic. Some large venues, some large events will have this for you. Like, say, a Geo Woodstock. They're going to have a area set up, more than likely with a sound system in place, so they can run people through it.
Well, it's something that you want to
you can go rent it.
So you can go out and do the rentals. Sometimes you'll get lucky and you'll have a DJ in your group who can also provide the backup stuff like that. So the problem, though, is with the DJ gear, it doesn't typically work all that well for doing what's referred to as sound reinforcement, where you're trying to boost the speaker's quality.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really designed for making music come out sounding big and loud. And when you get into those situations, a lot of the time they'll do feedback quite easily. So make sure that you're going to test these audio setups, whether it's provided or not. Test it first, make sure you got it working, and make sure that your microphone is behind the speakers and the speakers aren't pointing back at the microphone. Yeah, that's one of the first things I see a lot of people do is they start wandering out in front of the speaker because they don't want to be near the speaker, so they'll wander out in front of it, and oh boy, does that create problems.
And Daryl, you brought up a good point with the DJ setups. A lot of those, they really amplify the bass. And why that's really good for music, that's terrible for voice. You can so much you can't understand what everybody's saying.
Yeah, it doesn't do it in that nice Barry White way. It does it in the bad. Yeah, it does it in that bad I can't hear you anymore way.
Exactly, and you may talk louder, and all it does is just get mushier.
Yeah. Now that said, you can make do with it, especially if you have a DJ with a equalizer of some type. You can do some boosting. Set it up and to operate the board. So, something to hopefully get and have someone there to help out with it.
Now, as I said earlier, I don't want to stress it enough. I can't stress it enough. It doesn't matter how impressive your presentation is if they can't hear you. So another thing, Daryl, you brought it up, that we often do a panel discussion. We'll have 4, 5, 6 people. So have a mic per person. That really helps. I mean, passing a mic between people can get old quick. And having a mic per person really helps that on the fly, that spark of creativity when they've got a mic in front of them, they go, oh, wait, I've got something to add to that. I think it helps the conversation so much more than passing it.
Yeah, absolutely. And it does also allow you to do some adjustments for each person. So if one person is a little less loud,
good point,
you can adjust for that. Especially when you have more timid people, it really helps. And it's definitely something to remember. But a lot of times you're not going to be doing a panel. You're going to be doing an individual presentation, so one mic will work fine for that. However, if you have questions, as the presenter, remember that most people aren't going to be able to hear who's talking in the audience. So repeat the question, and what's that old rule that we were always taught in media service? I can't remember the class, but basically our media classes is repeat the question as you understand it, so that they're hearing what you're answering, not what they think you're answering, what you think you're answering.
Exactly. Well, maybe not exactly, but I get the point.
Yeah. So let's get into the video issues a bit, and this isn't going to be true of a lot of places, but if you're trying to give a presentation where you're showing videos, obviously you're going to need some kind of video projection or a big screen if you have a small enough group, or if you're trying to give like a PowerPoint presentation, some kind of slide deck, you're going to have something to do. And especially for like those geocaching 101s, this really can't be stressed enough that for that crash course at the beginning, you really should have some visuals, especially like what does the website look like? Give them some sample images off of a smartphone app, maybe some sample images of a GPSR. So you're going to want to have some kind of projector. Exactly.
And, you're going to want to bring a laptop or a video source of some sort, be it a DVD player, what have you, a projector, cables, extension cords. I'm going to push extension cords, and a screen. Now, you may be doing a presentation to 100 people, or you may be doing a presentation to 3. You're going to have to scale this to fit your audience. So, if you're doing it to 3 people, you're not going to need all this. Grab a laptop and an external monitor, and you're good.
Yeah.
So,
and don't forget, you don't necessarily need a laptop. a lot of the
Yeah.
PDAs, a lot of the, well, I shouldn't say PDAs anymore, but tablets and smartphones will do the video out. You know, I've seen people do it off those old disc-based iPods, even just with standard NTSC video, just stills that they created. Video of individual photos basically that they exported.
Right.
So you can do it all kinds of different ways, and especially if you're going to be doing a presentation about how to use like a smartphone app, that's a great way to go. But here's the catch. Not all projectors work with all laptops, all devices. So make sure, if you can, to test that ahead of time.
Right.
You're going to have better latitude with a laptop. So let's say I'm going to give a presentation about how to use Geosphere. I would like to run it right from the app on the phone, but usually when I get into those situations, I'm still going to do the slide deck and try to get the screenshots to show people how to do it, put together something basic. If I can get the app to work, and one of the problems with showing people how to use an app on a phone, you're tethered to that projector, or maybe you have something like a wireless connection, but you're tethered to the room. So how are you going to show people how to find a cache if you're in the room?
Exactly.
So it's great. By all means, give it a shot. You can walk people through stuff real time. They get a feel for how it works. But getting those screenshots and building an imitation of what it works like is a good backup plan, and something that you can show stuff you can't show them in a classroom.
Well, that's where my extension cords come in. If you have enough extension cords, you can walk them right out to a cache.
Yeah, extension cords, and don't forget the extension cords for the audio. And hey, here's an idea. Bring a videographer, do 2 screens. You got one guy walking around with the camera, and then you can do the live roving instruction about how to find the cache under the lamp skirt in the parking lot.
I love it. Okay, you don't have to do that. Don't count on having reliable internet access wherever you go. So if you're going to walk them through, say, the geocaching.com website, take screenshots of the website pages that you're going to use ahead of time. It's nice if it works. If it doesn't work, at least you have a backup to go from. So, work on that. Because often the Wi-Fi can be overwhelmed. If you're doing it, say, in a public library, in a meeting room of a public library, you could have 16 people come in with smartphones, and suddenly your Wi-Fi connection is dirt slow. So,
yeah, definitely, and you get into problems at the Muni Wi-Fi kind of things, like a library or venue Wi-Fis.
geocaching.com for some reason or another.
Streaming Netflix off of their laptops. So when that happens, you're not going to have enough bandwidth to do much of anything. That is really, really bothersome. So make sure that you've got a backup plan for doing that if at all possible.
Now, the last part of this I called the booth. Again, it depends on the size of the venue you're looking at. If you're looking at a Geo Woodstock, you're looking at a 10 by 10 spot with an easy up or canopy, table, chairs, signs, my extension cords, rope, awning, whatever you need. If you're looking at a meeting room in a public library, you can get by with one table and a chair for your guests to sit in. Maybe I tend to do presentations standing up. As you can see, I move around a lot.
Well, maybe they can see. They might be listening to the audio, and in that case, they can't see you.
Well, maybe they hear the breeze going past the microphone there.
Oh, okay. Yeah, and we shouldn't limit the booth to just the presentations, too, because this could be a factor in something like loading those GPSRs. You don't want a bunch of laptops out on a table if they could get rained on and have no cover in the picnic area.
There you go. So, find out what the venue provides. And I always say bring enough of what you need, regardless that what's provided. You may go to a venue and they say, yes, you'll be provided an 8-foot table. Well, you get there and the 8-foot table is not strong enough to put 3 laptops on. It's going to fall apart if you do that. In this case, I say bring your own. And if it's a large event, the event staff is more than likely going to be overwhelmed with requests anyway. So another thing is power. Can you tell I'm pushing extension cords on this one? Power may be farther away than you think. Daryl at Geo Woodstock 9 in Pennsylvania, I remember we were getting set up and you brought enough extension cords. Power was, what, 100 yards away?
Yeah, something like that, 100 yards away, and we had to run to 2 different outlets at 2 different sides because they did
do what we needed to do.
made arrangements, but they didn't have the arrangements. So yeah, I come prepared for such things because I've run into this many times. And the guys who do the professional shows like this typically come in with their own box and they tie in right to the meter. They come right out the bottom of the meter. They bypass all of the circuitry that's built into the venue, and they have their own power distribution because that way they know they're getting enough power and they're getting it clean. So, enough extension cords works great for us, but this is what the pros do: is they bring their own power from the box out.
You don't want to share power with the slushy stand right next to you.
Absolutely not.
And there's no such thing as too much. If you have to go out and buy some of these things, you can return what you don't use. If you go out and buy, an extra couple 100-foot extension cords, you can return them if you don't use them. Audio, video, and power on extension cords. Yeah,
and a good note on the power cords. There's all kinds of grades of power cords. If you know anything about electrical, great. Make sure that you buy the right stuff. But if not, look for the smaller numbers on the gauge of the extension cords, because that means it can carry more power. The smaller the number, more power. But little tip that you want to look for, especially if you're doing this stuff outdoors, look for the ones that are capable of some moisture. Look for those outdoor cables usually.
Yeah, they usually say outdoor rated cable. Yep.
Right, because those will work in either situation, and you don't have to worry about them running through the wet grass. You certainly don't want the connections laying in the grass, but you don't have to worry about the cable itself being in the grass, which you might have to worry about if you don't get one of those cables.
Yeah, exactly. Get a little rain, or you come out too early in the morning and there's still dew on the grass. Don't run them underwater, but you get the idea.
Yeah, never put a cable underwater, please.
Now, vinyl signs and other printed material can be an expensive and lengthy process, so plan ahead. Don't rely on same-day service. Don't think, hey, you know what, I'll just go out and get a sign made today and 25 brochures printed up. That'll work just fine. That can burn you quickly.
Yeah, well, it's always nice to have a bunch of signs prepped and ready for anything that you can possibly think of. We did a bunch of signs with arrows pointing this way. We had signs for schedules when we did that thing. One of the things I like doing for the GPS loading is Garmin units with a big arrow so that you can put this thing up, try to hang it above the head of whoever's doing it. I've done stand-up signs where it's arrows pointing sideways, all kinds of things like that. Magellan Explorers units here, blah, blah, blah. And it does help to have those kind of things ready.
Exactly. Plan that you're going to be locked in the booth all day. I say bring bread and water. It's kind of like a prison term. You're going to be there all day. I can't tell you the number of times I've gone to do an event and I haven't been able to get away for 3 and 4 hours at a time.
Yeah, one of the downsides of being an event host or even a helper is frequently you don't get to enjoy the event at all.
Exactly.
You're there to make sure that everyone else enjoys the event, and you get to work the whole thing. And when we did the Geo Woodstock booth, I did like 20-minute walk around the venue just to see what it was like, and that was my entire Geo Woodstock experience. The rest of the time I was in the booth doing podcasts.
Yeah, I had the exact same experience. I just did the block party here. And, from set up till tear down, I left the booth one time.
Yep.
So
yeah, and we do all kinds of events around here where it's just the breakfast meet and greet. We don't have any presentations. We just have the breakfast meet and greet, load the GPSRs, and go. The people who are there loading the GPSRs don't get out for a good 3 hours a lot of the time because they leave the breakfast early. Everything back out, and by the time that's done, everyone else has gotten an hour or more head start because you don't have the the GPS. Well, you know what I mean. You've got so much going into just loading the GPSRs, tearing the stuff out, starting with putting it in, but tearing the stuff out and getting going, that you've lost half your day.
Exactly. With setup, application, teardown, yeah, that can be your day sometimes.
Yeah, so it's always good to make sure you have water when you're caching, but that holds true to when you're geocaching events. Make sure you've got your water, and if you need snacks or something like that to tie you over, make sure you've got something like that too.
Exactly. Now, this tip is not only good for events, but it's good in life. Always have duct tape or gaffer's tape with you. I can't tell you the things I've made out of tape.
Yeah, I hate to admit it, but I do keep gaffer's tape. And for people who don't know what gaffer's tape is, it's essentially a special version of what most people think of as duct tape, built for gaffers in the music or in
audio.
Entertainment industry.
Yeah,
audio, video, motion picture, whatever. And it's used to temporarily tape stuff down. Everything from, if you're doing video, they'll usually use gaffer's tape to tape the little itty-bitty lavalier microphone inside someone's shirt so that you don't see it. To let's go and tape down this big cord, or tape up this reflector on the side of the wall. Gaffer's tape is the solve-all solution, kind of like the jokes about duct tape.
Exactly. Gaffer's tape is more flexible than duct tape. It doesn't have a vinyl coating, and the adhesive is less permanent. However, it's just as sticky. And since it's more of a cloth tape, you can tear it into much smaller pieces and work with it easily.
Yeah, it's much more easy to work with, and I'll say that the good gaffer's tape sticks better than the duct tape that I've used. The difference, though, is it doesn't stick as long, which is a good thing. And the big thing that we hit on there, it doesn't have the residue.
Right.
Or at least not the good stuff.
Not the good stuff. You can put it on a painted wall and carefully peel it off, and the wall still looks good.
Yeah, though I don't generally recommend the painted wall.
I know. I'm using that as an example.
Yeah, no, but I've seen some issues with any adhesives start seeping into, especially like the oil-based matte paints. So, as a general rule, you try not to duct tape or gaffer tape anything with a matte surface, but it's a solve-all. Any problems that you're going to have, bring the duct tape, it will fix it.
Exactly. We were at the block party 2 years ago. Had our pamphlets and cards set up on the table, and a wind came by, and cards were being blown off. Wits End grabs the gaffer's tape and forms a nice little distribution. I don't know what to call it. A thingamabob. And you could, grab the card right out of it. It was genius. I looked at that and go, how did you just do that? I'm saving that. It was made out of gaffer's tape.
Oh, I've solved so many problems all over the place with gaffer's tape. It is just like the jokes. Everything can be fixed
Hmm.
with gaffer's tape. So, with that, I think we're going to wrap up the episode because we are having some problems with Google Plus. I don't know what's going on, but we keep getting the errors. And well, we've been talking for 3/4 of an hour, so we're going to let you guys go. But want to hear all of your stories about events and tell us some of the things that we've missed that other people should know.
Hmm.
We know we're going to have to do another one of these shows later on, but let's get some tips and tricks in there. And you know how to get a hold of those, and I'll be talking a little bit more about that in a second. Now, Bad Cop, before we let them go, did you want to do a quick rundown of those next shows again?
Yes, in the next 3 weeks, we have some really pretty exciting shows. Next week, we are looking at caching with UV light. And then following that is a randomized show. The randomized shows are a lot of fun. It allows us to get questions from you and put them into a show to address, just a bit here and a bit there. It's a bit like a clip show on TV. And then finally, for the third week, we're having the Ontario Trails Project. And that's one of the exciting caching trails to look at. So, Daryl, that's what we've got for the next 3 weeks.
So check out the Cachemaniacs website at cachemaniacs.com for more on the GeoGearHeads, including show notes for this and all of our episodes. We love hearing from our listeners, so leave us feedback by calling 206-350-3647, by emailing geogearheads at cachemaniacs.com, or through social media. Your support helps keep the Cachemaniacs shows coming. Please consider making a PayPal donation through the link on our website to support the Cachemaniacs shows. GeoGearHeads is produced by Chris Umfenauer and Daryl Wattenberg. This show is copyright 2013 by Daryl Wattenberg, all rights reserved.
Cache with the Cachemaniacs.